More than 12,000 Medicaid beneficiaries in Arkansas have lost coverage for not complying with the state's work requirements, according to data released by the state on Thursday. In the past month alone, 3,815 beneficiaries lost coverage for failing to meet the work requirements for 3 straight months. Arkansas began phasing in work requirements for Medicaid beneficiaries in August. In the 3 months the work requirements have been in effect, 12,128 people were removed from Medicaid and are locked out until January 1st. In addition, there are 6,002 people with 2 strikes against them who are at risk for losing coverage next month. Arkansas became the first state ever to implement work requirements after gaining approval from the Trump administration earlier this year. Under the rules, which took effect in June, recipients must work, go to school, volunteer, or search for jobs for at least 80 hours a month or be stripped of their coverage until the following year. Arkansas exempts beneficiaries who are pregnant, medically frail, have a dependent child in the home, are caring for an incapacitated person, or are already working. The work requirements only apply to low-income, childless adults who gained coverage through Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. Beneficiaries subject to the requirement must file reports with the state each month detailing how they are meeting it. Failing to do so counts as non-compliance, meaning people who may be working 80 hours a month can still get kicked off the program if they don't file monthly reports. State officials in the Trump administration say work requirements are a pathway out of poverty and provide an incentive for people to work. Yet the data shows almost all of the people who lose coverage are not reporting any work activities. Only 1,525 people met the requirement in the past month. Of those individuals, 968 said they were already eligible because they were meeting the work requirements for food stamps, which satisfies the Medicaid mandate. Critics allege those numbers show that the rules aren't promoting work and are merely kicking people off Medicaid and saving the state money. And they are absolutely correct. So let's go back to this line right here. I'm going to read it again for emphasis. Beneficiaries subject to the requirement must file reports with the state each month detailing how they are meeting it. Failing to do so counts as noncompliance, meaning people who may be working 80 hours a month can still be kicked off the program if they don't file monthly reports. What I find really interesting about a lot of people who are part of the caucus of individuals who say they're opposed to handouts and people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps is that they oftentimes will say, oh, if those people wanted something better, they need to go and work for it. Well, you see that they're working. But because of these ridiculous requirements, people who are working are having their coverage taken by a loophole. They're meeting the requirement, they're just not filing papers. Now, what would you rather a person do? File the papers and lie about them working, or file it, or rather work and not file them, and then still have your coverage taken? And you would think a lot of people who call themselves part of the pull your up crowd would go and say, oh man, this is terrible. These people that are getting up and working 80 hours and actually showing up to try and get money that they earned from their character and willingness to go out and put themselves on the line should be compensated. I would think everyone would be on board with that. I would think you would have loads of Republicans saying, hey, we have to stop this requirement from screwing over individuals who actually are trying to make ends meet in a manner that is them showing up and going to work. But instead you have these tribalist morons who sit around and say, well, they should have filed the papers. Why did they file the papers? And so in their own little belief system of, well, everything happens for a reason, and everyone who's screwed up is there because of their own choices rather than a circumstance. So just having a stagnant wage for the last 40 years, they just tell them to get lost. And it's really sad because I can guarantee you, just as I am sure that these people only would become concerned if they were met with the same ridiculous requirements as to why this policy is trash, are the same individuals who've convinced me that if they were, let's say, Democrats and the Democrats were taking away people's health care through saying that you had to file papers for the work that you're already doing, they would be completely fine with it by virtue of their party doing something. In other words, they won't take a stand against whatever side they're on because in their mind they cannot think for themselves, or rather they choose not to. They turn their brain off. They see all this stuff about making America great again, and they refuse to compensate their thoughts with anything that actually goes against their belief system. I will never support a candidate whose idea of getting people to work is to create requirements where, as you saw in this article, people who do the requirements, or rather people who work, get kicked off for not reporting as part of the state's secret ploy to save cash. And that's really all this is. And it drives me insane that we're having thousands of people in a state that's run by Republicans continuing to vote against their best interests. Hutchinson won another term. He's going to be able to keep this going for at least another 4 years. And none of the people who are having this happen to them, I can guarantee you, support this policy of his. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed up for Medicaid, or rather Medicare, to begin with. And you really have to be a liberal or a Democrat or a Green or whatever to see that. I really thought that when people stopped being obsessed with Trump, if they're fans of his, and go after those who are in lower positions like state governors, you could get a more of a constructive perspective on this, because it's not telling you we're going against the guy that you really like. It's just this subordinate of his. But instead, they choose not to. So more people will lose their coverage. People there will vote against their best interests. Trump supporters will keep being okay with loads of individuals getting their coverage taken away as they work. And into the toilet we go.